Many people who play sports will win a championship at some point in their life, whether it's a local rec league or it's a state championship. But what this team from Trenton accomplished in 1962 is something that most people can only dream about. They won the Babe Ruth League World Series. But what is the Babe Ruth League anyway? And what makes this championship so special? Well, the league started back in 1951, about 10 years before this championship. But back then, it wasn't named after the baseball legend. At first, it was known as the Little Bigger League. Now this name might sound odd, but it'll make more sense if you know why the league was started in the first place. So Little League back then was only for kids 12 and under. This meant that if you were around 13 to 15 years old, you were too old to play in Little League, but you were also too young to play in amateur leagues. The Babe Ruth League wanted to give these kids a place to play. Even though the league was relatively new back in 1962, it was still pretty large back then. That year, there were over 9,700 teams playing under the Babe Ruth League name. Also, if you noticed, the Jackets has world champions, and that's because there were teams from almost every US state and some international teams from countries such as Canada, Puerto Rico, and Morocco. But with so many teams, how do they even crown a single champion? It wasn't just one single tournament, but a series of smaller ones that led up to the championship. It began with the district level, followed by the state and regional levels. By the time it got to the World Series, there were only 8 teams remaining. These teams were the champions of each region. The Trenton team themselves, they came from the Middle Atlantic region. The scale of this championship was much bigger than what these kids were likely used to. They were only 15 years old or younger, and they were playing away from home in a game that was covered on TV and the radio. Luckily for the Trenton team, they didn't have to travel out of state for the World Series. It took place down south in Bridgeton, about 2 hours from their hometown. Let's not forget that there were some really big names in attendance at these games as well, including baseball legend Ted Williams, Richard Hughes, the governor of New Jersey at the time, and Claire Ruth, the wife of Babe Ruth. So clearly, the pressure was on for these guys. Trenton would go on to beat teams from Almonte, California, Calumet City, Illinois, and Portland, Oregon. They would have to win one more against Portland, though, if they wanted to secure the championship. This game would stay close throughout. The big moment for Trenton came when Vincent Anapie came to the plate. He struck out. And you might be wondering, how can your own player striking out lead to a win? Well, the rule is that when the catcher drops the third strike or the pitch is in the dirt, he has to throw the ball over to first base to secure the out. However, the opposing catcher must have forgotten this rule because he threw the ball over to third base as Vince hustled his way to first. The next batter, Christopher Angeli, walked, advancing him to second. After that, Dennis Starr grounded out, but Anapie was able to advance to third in the process. Then, unexpectedly, he took off for home plate. The ball beat him there easily, but after faking out the catcher, he avoided the tag and scored a crucial run. That run would be enough for Trenton to secure the championship as they shut down Portland in the next inning. This was the second time they won it all, and now, over 60 years later, it's still their most recent championship. Although not everybody knows about it today, it was a very special moment for Trenton, one that thousands of people showed up to watch. Thank you for listening to this story. Remember that you can see this championship jacket, along with many other artifacts, at the Trenton Free Public Library.